Hello everybody, we're working on Chapter 8 again, or still, depending on how you're looking at it. I just want to let everybody know who's watching this video. We are probably a little bit off track from where we'd like to be, but things happen in life and sometimes we just have to deal with it. So at this point, the work that I'm doing, I've zipped up my progress and included it at the very bottom of the Unit 5 folder. So if you want to grab the zip and unzip it and work right along with me, you can. Please keep in mind that this is version dependent, so you have to make sure that you're using the same versions that I'm using for both Ruby and Rails. To confirm, let me drop down to the root here, and I'm going to type a Ruby-V, and then I'm going to type a Rails-V. That one takes a little longer. I guess if you really want, you could also type a SQLite -- version. Oops. Is that a dash or is that a -v also? I always forget. Well, either way, there's a version for that too. That one's not really as important, but these two are important. And if you're working from the archive videos and you're following those, you really want stuff to work with those archive videos. Please remember that if you use the same versions I used, and that's why they're all dated and separated, the commands will work differently and the outputs will look different. We are working with Rails version 5, and really part of the reason we're having some difficulties is because of that version change. So every time there's a version change, we're always in the position as developers of going, oh, that used to work, why doesn't it work now? Why is it deprecated? What's the replacement? What do I do in this situation? And that's kind of where we're at. All right, so the first thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to switch into my projects folder, and I'm going to launch the web server. And preemptively, I did make a backup copy, if you guys are wondering, so I won't lose my work. And I'm going to go ahead and run the Rails server. And the reason I'm doing this is just to refresh my memory as to what we've accomplished and what we can and cannot do within the application. So the server is launching. Okay, so the web server is going. Now I am going to bring up a new browser tab. And instead of running the browser tab full screen, I thought it might be kind of a fun little exercise here, since I do have the screen resolution to support it. I'm going to actually bring down my font size a bit. So it's going to make it a little hard to read for now. But the point of it is I want you guys to understand that when the web server is running, it keeps an active record of everything that's going on as it's happening. Okay. All right, so in my browser now, we're going to go to localhost port 3000. And of course, if we want to get to the articles page, we type articles. Then you can watch on the left as the web server reacts to the application running in the browser. Remember, always first launch in the browser window is always slow when you're launching an application. It's got to find it, it's got to get it loaded into memory, it's got to get it active. But once it's loaded up and running, and this is true with the regular web server as well, things will be a lot snappier. If you ran it on a proper web server that had a lot of horsepower, a lot of CPUs and a lot of RAM and high bandwidth connection, you would see a significant performance increase. All right, so the article page has loaded, and I know that we can go ahead and show the article, hopefully. And notice there's a commenting feature available right here. So I'm going to see if Joe Blow can leave a comment here for us. You can see my great comment, complete nonsense. And if our work from last week worked, this comment will actually stick. And you know what? It did. Are you guys all able to do this at the very least? Because this is a pretty significant step. It's kind of neat to watch the stuff on the left-hand side because it shows all the pages being called. It shows the database interactions, whether they're successful or not. the SQL commands that are being generated for you. I mean, it's kind of a beautiful thing in that regard. Okay. The other thing that I would have you try is also click on the edit link and try to bring up the article and make a couple of little changes to it just to see if that works. So I did a couple little tweaks. Those seem to stick as well. Now I'm going to go back to the articles page. How do I get there? I guess I just have to type articles up at the top. And I'm going to actually create a new article. I want to make sure this works too. So let's do that. Alright, I'm going to click create. Hopefully you guys can accomplish this. Oh, the user must exist. What user? Do you guys have the same screen here? I gotta go to the login page. How the heck do I get to the login page? What? Oh, I gotta type it in. Alright. So I go to login. Is that a page? Nope. Could it be maybe users? Well, that's new. Yeah, I haven't gotten there yet, have we? All right. But we can figure out the fact that, well, hey, should I try to create a new user? Sure, why not? Let's try to create a new user. All right, so I'm gonna be creating some stuff, so I better come up with a really catchy email address here that I'll remember. Why did I choose that? Because those are 4 keys in a row on the keyboard that are easy to type. And my password is going to be QWRE or ER twice. Alright, so now I created a new user. Let's double check to make sure that that user is still there. Let's bring up our SQLite browser tool. And I want to attach to our database. So I'm going to hit Open Database. And if I am moving too fast, just raise your hand, I'll slow down. But at this point, I'm gathering you guys are getting comfortable enough to keep up with me. Right, I'm not bedaffling you. Nobody's bedaffled? Slightly? Partially bedaffled?
I have an active model for doing attribute error when I tried to save the comment.
When you tried to save the comment?
Yeah.
Okay.
It says right here what the problem is, or which file it's in which line.
All right, let's go ahead and look at the user table. So I'm coming over to Browse Data, bringing up the users, and then I can see, indeed, that I have a new user, and notice how the password is hashed. Now, I was having a little bit of discussion before class with one of our online students about hashed passwords and the naming of password columns. And one thing I want to point out to you is take a look at this table and see if maybe this might be part of the issue, because I think one of the issues that you were having, Bill, was that password column doesn't exist.
Correct.
Right, and can you notice that it doesn't exist on mine?
Yeah, I have the same thing you have. Yeah, I mean, I have hash password, but I ran that command in chapter 6.
Right.
I changed that from password to hash underscore password.
Okay, so hypothetically it should work.
Here, though, and that's exactly what I have now.
Right, but notice that I also have the 2 original users up there, and I never went through the process of hashing their passwords. Okay, so I'm just saying. Now, one thing that I should let you know, there are websites. If you kind of want to supersede that whole process where you can do an SHA1 hash right online. So I could take the password from the database. So for example, one is secret, and I would just type in secret, type a hash, and then I could take this value, copy it, and actually force it into the database here and write it in. And if I get any sort of application errors later, I can do that. Now I know that in Chapter 6, they had a procedure for us doing it otherwise. From a practical standpoint, from like a real world standpoint, I'd hop out on the web and hash it like that really quick to drop it in. And I think I kind of gave you guys that clue, all you WordPress people who are in web project management, right? That's a hack too. That's a hack that at one point in time, maybe a good dozen years ago, I had to figure out on my own, because if you have a project and you forget the admin password, but you still have access to the database, guess what? You can go in there, hash the password, force it in, and log in and take control of WordPress that way. It's also a way to hack WordPress, and that's why you want to be really secure with how you apply passwords to your systems. How did I get to users again? All right, well, I opened the database.
No, I mean in the browser.
Oh, you mean the address that I went to?
Yeah.
Um,
I had background.
It was users new.
Okay, gotcha. I was like, users what?
Yeah, and now remember with the URLs, and this is one of the big takeaways from this unit. When we're generating controllers, the controllers are part of what's responsible for handling the URL and directing the traffic and doing certain actions. So when I type users in the URL, it looks for the user's controller, and then within users is now looking for the method called new. Additionally, if I wanted, and if I knew the right syntax and what parameters were expected, I could add a third item after the machine URL that would be a parameter that would be passed to the new method. And in some cases you do that. In fact, when you are looking at, for example, articles, right? Well, articles has a controller, and we're going to bring up which article to. This is actually a parameter. This is the ID number of the article in the database. That's kind of interesting. And then if you wanted to, for example, go through the process of, like, let's say deleting or destroying something, that would bring up a different URL. Right now, I really don't want to do that. In fact, actually, I should probably do a refresh. Did I ever create that new article? No, we ran into an issue, right?
Yeah.
All right. Do you guys remember what that issue was?
User did not.
Yeah. So that's why we were looking in the database. All right. So I created a user, but wait, we haven't really done that process yet, and this is one of the reasons we have to finish out this chapter, is to make those associations between the users and everything else. All right, so from my recollection, and you know, my recollection isn't always the greatest. I'm going to admit that, because a lot of stuff happens between one week and the next when we're doing this stuff. I'm actually going to bring up my editor now, and I'm going to start taking a look at some of the files that we were supposed to edit, and then make sure that I have changes put into those files that I expected, so I'm not like working forward and going, why isn't this working? So this is just basically a double check at this point. And where is that Notepad++? There it is. All right. So we're going to do a little side-by-side comparison. And I am backtracking a couple of pages to make sure that my changes are all shown. So I'm going to bring up my project folder, and I'm just going to go through, well, let's see, we're at the top of page 158. I just want to make sure that these changes are put in, because, you know, maybe we did them and I just don't remember them, but frankly, I don't remember them, so I'm going to double check. I have people here that assure me that we did, because of where they left things. So this is app views articles show. Does that look okay to you guys? Looks fine to me. Just in a little side-by-side checking. All right, next file is views, layouts, application. And this application file that we're looking at right now, this one is a little bit more on the global level. And it looks like the two real important things to add are these two lines. And I don't know if you're seeing what I'm doing, but I'm just double checking to make sure all the syntax is correct. Now, the other thing, do you guys remember when we use these ASP style tags, like the one I'm highlighting right now, that there's the % version and then there's the % equals version? Those of you that are in Java 2 right now taking JSP, what does the equal sign mean? It means the same thing here. It's an expression, okay? Something more? That we're pushing data back to the... Well, no. Well, this implies that we're going to run some sort of programming code just by the fact of the % sign. But the equal sign means that we're rendering something inside there. So it's not something that's hard-coded. It's something that's being generated by a different process, either pulling up a variable, running a method, retrieving from the database, doing some math, whatever the case is. But that's indicating that we're pushing stuff back. And like the big container that takes most of the information is the yield one, and that absolutely must have it. So, all right, let's go to the next one. This is the article HTML ERB. Notice that this one is different, right? Because this one doesn't have an underscore at the beginning. What does the underscore indicate? Hint, hint, hint might be on the final. It's a partial, right? And that means it's not a complete page. It is part of a page, so that this is like when we do PHP and we do includes and we take little pieces of pages and stick them all together and then make them like work as in one whole thing. The point of that, of course, is to just basically simplify the process of repeating things. Why repeat something if you can just pull it in? All right. This one doesn't look quite as verbose. Is it the same? It does look the same to me because it ends right here. Yeah, that's the one difference. This one has form 4 and the book has div 4. Now, I'm going to put a little highlight here for the next time I teach this for the people in the spring.
Are you still teaching Ruby?
Just to remember, otherwise I won't. All right, let's look at this one. Views, comments, and comments. That all looks good to me. If you guys see something that's off, please say something. This one stayed div 4. Now notice this other one here. This one's got the form 4. And this is views, comments, new, which is the same folder here. We do have a form 4. Got article, comments, new, etc. And then a bunch of divs. And that all seems okay to me as well. Moving on to the next one. So now we are on page 160 where we supposedly left off. And we're going back to comment HTML ERB, the partial. And then we're adding or changing this little bit. Does that look the same to you guys? It does. One fair word of warning, if you guys are seeing things like this, and you see things split over a line like this, and you see 2 line numbers, that can be problematic if you haven't already discovered that. It doesn't matter so much with the HTML stuff. but with the Ruby stuff, it does matter. So that's one spot where you can get kind of stuck a little bit. All right. So now at this point, they had you test it, and that's kind of what we were doing when we got started. And I think at that point, we were pretty successful in getting it to look that way. We were also pretty successful in getting the comments to add to the page. All right. So at this point, what we're going to be doing in order to be able to allow a user to create content and attribute the content to the user, we're now kind of moving into something that typically when we've created applications in the past, and I don't know to what level you guys have done that, usually session management is something that we didn't, I'm not going to say didn't worry about so much, but weren't in such granular control of. And right now what we're going to be doing is we are going to be creating a controller to control user sessions. So whether you're a user that's creating something or editing it or commenting, in order to be able to keep track of your users, we do a thing called session management. A lot of programming languages and tools have automatic tools built in, but the thing that's really important to remember about working with web pages, and most notably the HTTP protocol, is the HTTP protocol is stateless, which is one of the weaknesses of working with web pages, compared to working with real operating systems. Because when we work with the real operating system, we have user management is built into the operating system, right? So we keep track of when somebody's logged in and what privileges they have. On a web-based application, we don't have that capability attached, so we have to kind of create it. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to leave my server running in this prompt, but I'm going to bring up a new command prompt window. And I think for this one, I'm probably going to bump up the font size a little bit at least. Are you guys okay with that? Can you read that, or should I go up one more? All right, up one more. That seems pretty reasonable right there. All right, and the command that we're going to run right now is, of course, needs to be run in the correct folder. So let's drop down to the root. So cd space /. And actually, and I would say space / because that's kind of like a little thing. Like if you're working on a Linux or Unix file system, you have to put the space in. But in Windows, you can actually just do that, and it works. But notice my habit, because it works in Windows too. All right, so now we're going to change into our projects folder, and then into our blog folder. All right, let's go ahead and run the Rails command. So Rails generate controller capital S sessions. All right, go ahead and run the command. Shouldn't really run into too many issues here. And then you can see the tools that we created. So we created controllers. So we created a session controller, which is a Ruby file. We created a view for sessions. We created test components. We also created helpers. And then, of course, as with all the stuff that we're generating now, and if you guys haven't caught on to this, we will have both JavaScript and CSS pre-created. The Ruby platform prefers, you don't have to do it with CoffeeScript and you don't have to do it with SCSS, but they prefer that because it's kind of considered the modern approach. And I think I mentioned last time, if you want to learn a couple little cool little things to add to your repertoire for going out for looking for work, mentioning that you know a little bit of CoffeeScript and a little bit of SCSS. I don't see CoffeeScript used as heavily as I see the SCSS used, and that is definitely used, and depends on the platforms and the place that you work for. All right. Now what we need to do in addition is we need to jump to our routes file, and at this point I'm hoping that you guys are getting comfortable and able to find these things, but the routes file is in the config folder, and we're going to have to add a piece to that file to allow for sessions. So underneath users here, we're going to type resource, notice singular, session, also singular. Why? Why are the others plural? Why is the session singular?
It's only gonna be one session per user.
That's correct. That is absolutely correct. Thank you. Okay, Control S to save, folks. Save that work. Don't lose it. All right. Additionally, in that same routes file, we are going to add a couple of additional lines here. And I'm going to copy paste these in and do any corrections as necessary. All right. So this is kind of interesting. Notice what we're adding there on lines 8 and 9. And notice how the lines begin. They begin with one of those HTTP transfer protocol keywords that we're familiar with, right? What does a GET imply? That it's visible in the URL. What's going to be visible? Log in or log out. So what we're doing here is helping to establish a path to those particular actions within sessions. So notice that if somebody adds a /login to the URL, this is going to route them to the sessions controller and the new method. Isn't that interesting? So instead of it being controlled by the controller, we're actually creating a route here, because the person might not know to type sessions to the URL. That might even not even occur to them. It might occur to them to type in log in or log out, though. And it's logical, and that's why we're adding it. All right. Now we're going to move over to the controller file. So we're going to go to the AppController session controller, which I do not have open yet. Don't forget to save the routes. So I'm going to pull that file open. So blog, app, controllers, sessions, controller, and up into the editor. Got a bit of code to add here, so make some blank space to insert things. I am going to copy paste and then adjust. Be very careful with these copy pastes, and please remember that Ruby likes the convention of 2 space indents. Looks pretty good to me. And Control S to save. Make sure that these longer lines that you see here, that would be this if line, that's all one line. And even though mine's scrolling down to 2, if I were to expand it, you guys should be aware of the fact that it is on one line. I just want you to be aware of that. It does matter. And sometimes I see people copying and pasting, and they'll get kind of stuck just because of that. All right, next thing. Apps views sessions new. App views sessions. Oh wait, we don't have that file, so what do we do? Let's create it. So let's do a new file. First thing you do is save as. Where does it go? Sessions. So app views sessions, and this will be called new.html.erb. What does ERB stand for? What does RB stand for? Ruby, what does E stand for? Embedded. I'm just saying it might end up on a final exam. I'm just saying. Hint, hint, hint.
It's not listed in there.
All right. Let's copy and paste that stuff in. Oops, that's not the right stuff. But that is. Try to match up the formatting as best we can. Looks pretty good. Control S to save. So, I mean, it doesn't take much to guess what we're doing here, does it? We're basically creating another form to allow people to do what? Log in. Is this an entire page? Not really. No, it's not at all. Doesn't. Where's the doc type and all that stuff? It's not there. All right, now we're going to go back to our sessions controller, which we still have open. And at the bottom, we're going to add a destroy method. So before the closing end tag, and then let's get our indents in here correctly. And save your work. All right. I am going to pause the video at this point, let you guys all catch up for a sec, and then we're going to try the next step in the browser. All right, we took a short break here in class, and we're getting back to it. And what I'm going to try right now is some of the tasks that they're pointing out here. Now, we know that before we started doing these changes, that we knew that this link worked, the one that those users knew. So let's see if it still does. Okay, and now it actually pulls up a page, right? Last time we got an error when we did this, correct? Or no, we were able to create a user. Okay,
Yeah,
let's create it. Let's create another user. This one's going to be asdf@asdf.com, and my password is going to be asdf. If you guys aren't noticing a pattern here. All right, so we successfully were able to accomplish that. Can you guys do that? Okay, I'm going to assume that's a yes. The next thing that we put in here, if you remember, we made that change to the routes file, and one of the things that allows us to do is if we just put in /login like we see here, that should take us to the same spot. So let's go ahead and just click that link. And does it? No, it takes us to the login page. Why? Can anybody explain to me why? As I highlight the reason. Because this is an indicator here that login is going to be triggered. Now, how do we know that? All right, so if we come in here, this is the sessions controller, correct? Is this where we should be looking to see how it handles the login? Don't nod and agree, because no, because that's not really the answer. Where should we really be looking? Where is it? You remember, see the part I'm highlighting here? What is this telling us to do? Well, it is, but it's taking us to the sessions controller and triggering the new method, but it's doing this as login. So what does that do? Do you see a new in here anywhere?
Render action.
The HTML page. The new HTML.
No, this is the form.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me bring up the user's controller. Do you see a new action here? Yes. All right. Do you see a destroy here. Okay, what about the sessions controller? We already have that open. Well, we have a destroy here. Okay, I'm going to very slowly highlight the key line. Yeah, it is there, but it's not there in the same way. The question is, what is it rendering? Now, the whole thing of it is inside of an if statement that plays off of the user model. That's really kind of the key tie-in here. So it's one controller utilizing the model of something else and the aspect of that model. So what I'm hoping to try to get you guys to see, and I'm going to admit it's not a very clear vision, is the connections between all the pieces. Because once you start to see those connections and feel what they do, and I don't expect you guys to become experts, within the next week and a half that we have left of class, but you're going to start to see these connections and you're going to appreciate them, maybe not now, maybe in 6 months, maybe in a year, maybe at some other point when you're working with some other MVC style of application, and you will have an aha moment, because I know that I've had them. And sometimes you just don't see the pieces because you're looking in the wrong spots. Okay? The new is here and the destroy is here that are being alluded to. All right. Also, there's a logout page. Let's click that one and see what that one does. And what did that do? Well, it logged us out, right? How did that do what it did? Well, to trace the path of it, first we go to the routes file. We know that if logout's added to the URL, it goes to the sessions controller, runs the destroy, there's a command for it, and then it redirects to the root path, and it puts out a message. Now, one thing that I've had students in the past notice is that there's a spot here where we're actually getting these messages twice, and there's a reason for that, and there's a fix for it that comes up. And if you watch the subsequent videos or look at the notes in the PDF, you'll see that there's actually a place to fix that, and it's not a big deal. All right. Now, I'm considering that the actions that we've done so far up until this point successful. Okay, so here's my modus operandi. Going to my folders, making sure all my Notepad++ stuff is saved. It is. Going down to the root of the projects folder, right click, copy, paste. What am I doing? Back up. I know I'm good up until this point. I don't really want to screw it up. And if this seems like it's excessive, I'm going to tell you what, it absolutely is not. What page are we on? 165. All right, so I got a safety net. Let's move on to the next section.
I'm still getting the error on this login page. I don't know why.
All right, we're moving on to the next section, and we're going to make a couple of edits here. Now, some of the things that we're going to do is like basically making tweaks to some of the things that we're working on. I'm kind of doing a really quick fast forward here before I start coding, and I'm looking for all the different changes that I'm going to be making. And it's pretty easy with the code at least. Looks like we have a few pages of additions. So I'm going to begin with the first one. First one's an app views articles index. So that's a file I need to open. In the interim, while we were paused, I did also make a backup copy up to this point. And I made the point here in class, is that excessive? And I said absolutely not, because at least I can go back to this point now. And really, anytime you have a significant success, or even a minor success, you should back up. Let's open this one up. this one's going to allow us to, well, that's not correct, is it? Blog app views, articles, that's not right at all. Are we supposed to change? Well, it says the current articles index page uses table markup to list articles. If you ever listed a blog, you've known that blah, 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 blah. So we actually want to get rid of all that stuff. Right? Okay, I just want to be sure. So we're going to keep our H1. Oh, yeah, this is correct. We're going to keep our line break. And we're going to paste in the new code. And remember that like double notification that was happening on those pages? Where it said you successfully logged out and it was happening twice? This is one of the reasons why. If you want to eliminate it now, you can. I think I make a note later on. You can just put in HTML comment marks here for now, if you wish.
Is there a Rails console?
All right. Now we're going to move on, and now that we've made this change, let's see if this command that they're pulling up brings up what we need. And notice it does. And what it did is it actually changed our view. And Rails has this default view where it pumps everything into a table, so you get like a nice grid kind of layout. And what this did is it just changed this into showing the article that you can edit and delete it. And I think this is the excerpt piece of it that you can see. So it's just a different view, but you really were doing the same thing. So that part worked. That was a success. All right. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a category listing to the article form. Now what this is going to allow people to do is when they create an article, they can select from a list the category that the article fits into. So if that user comes to the website and wants to sort by category, they can, and will give you the manual control of that. So let's go to this file, app views articles form partial. And they're adding this right below the location entry. So that'll be right here. Right above excerpt, right below location. And this stuff, you know, for the most part is treated as straight HTML, but I would still caution you to stick with the indent methods that they use. That also helps you to identify what lines go together. And I want you to be really aware of this right here. See, this is a comma. See, and I'm trying to be like real obvious about it, but I know the movements are small. This indicates that this really all should be on one line. In the book here, this is really one line of text. Because it is a Ruby, embedded Ruby command, we do want to make sure that that stuff's all on the same line. And what I would have you do is what I just did. And I just want to show you that if I were able to expand it all the way out, that does actually end up on the same line. So please make sure that you set yours up the same way. Same thing with label here, but this one seems to have ended up on the same line all on its own. No, we don't need a breakpoint. Let's just space it over, move the end tag over. The end tag goes with this loop here and the closing div. And a Control S to save. All right. Now, they want us to go back to the application now, and if I remember right, try adding a new article. You should see a form, and you should have a choice of categories. So let's do that. Back to the application, which should still be running. you should just work. Don't want to jinx myself. Dang it. All right.
That's what I got.
That's what you got too. All right. So at least we're consistent. And you got your finger raised there.
Yeah, it's just a matter of changing a variable.
All right. So, well, let's read the error message first. It says, where line 30 raised, undefined local variable or method f. All right. So really what they're referring to is this character here. So let's go to the code. And that is the file we were just working on, right? It is. All right. So line 30, we have f. So how do we fix that one, folks?
Scroll, please. You gotta change it to form. Or change form at the end in the like brackets. You can change that to F.
I can change this to F or change that down below to form. And I'm actually going to go with F here because that tends to be more of the convention in the language. All right, so let's go ahead and do it. Control S. I'm going to click the back button in the browser, click New again, and all right. Oh, there's more. So now we need to change all these forms to F's as well. All right.
That's why I just did form.
Yeah.
All right, because,
All
okay.
the other previous code is form.
All right.
So,
Fine. I'll switch this to form. But if you guys ever notice, most of the other examples you run to, they'll use a single letter, usually F standing for form. All right. Third time's the charm, right? Hey. Well, that didn't work out exactly how I wanted. I was kind of hoping that they would go across the screen like they did here.
I did this 4 weeks ago too. I had everything going down instead of across.
And the question is why? All right, so see if I can figure that out. Well, there's a line break right here. Well, that one we want, right? That one we want because it creates that. What we're also then seeing, okay, we got ID, we got the label tag, and the checkbox. I don't see anything here that's triggering a line break. That's what's a little perplexing about it. And we got the box and then the label. So the label is here. Checkbox tag, category IDs, article include. And I don't see anything here that would prevent it or cause it. So these typically would be inline tags. Now, did you guys see what I just did there? I added a space right here. Now that seems really stupid, right? If that fixes it. The other thing that you could do, okay, I'm just double checking because this is, whenever you see do, what does that imply? Implies a loop. All right. So we also have a loop here. Now it could just be another one of these like changes in the language, but my anticipation is that there's something here that's forcing it. Let's try that one more time. Back to the browser. All right, let's create new. Still coming up that way. I'm not going to worry about it significantly, but I do want to view the source.
That's exactly what I did when I did this 2 weeks back. I ignored it and went on and finished the chapter and on.
Okay. Oh, how do you like that? See this? Yeah, line break is ending up, and that's not where it should be. But it is. Oh, yeah, that's for categories. Label for article categories. Then why are these? Well, I'll tell you what, I think that's kind of weird to do this form label, honestly, but that's just me. All right.
Do you get routing errors if you do that? Like, you didn't do all the margin?
All right, not sure exactly what's causing those line breaks. You guys can see here for yourselves, there's no line breaks being embedded in here, right?
Same issue.
It seems to be the browser. I'm wondering if I take that URL, let's pull up Firefox. There too. So why is it putting in a line break then? Well, I can sit there and troubleshoot that problem all night too, but that's not my concern right now. Let's get the application working. And the point is if you are creating an article, it's got to be music, right? Okay. So we're still getting the user must exist error. Are you guys getting that too? Is that what's supposed to happen? Did you read the book? Because we haven't attributed a user, right? Okay. So that's actually exactly what you should expect. All right, so I'm moving on to the next major change here. And I know I'm trying to move quickly because we're so short on time. All right. Now we're going to go to this file here, AppController's Application Controller. AppController's Application Controller. I don't see it. Where is it? All right. Notice one difference here, old code and new code, syntax differences. And now you guys should be getting to the point in your programming career where, what's an exception? You guys are supposed to all like raise your hands and go, oh, I know, teacher, I know. An exception is what happens when you throw something at an application that it does not know how to deal with. So it could be reading stuff from a database or a file or from the keyboard or whatever, or from a variable, and you don't have some sort of provision in place to keep the application from crashing. So what this is being put in place to help us not crash the whole application if something's going on. Why would we protect from forgery, and what could we possibly forger here? Yeah, we could hypothetically maybe inject code, right, Tom?
A session.
Maybe it's session information, or maybe like, you know, some SQL code or something like that. And really what this allows us to do is to prevent the injection of code into form fields and then into our database and into other malicious areas. So it's really there for our protection. We do have all this code that needs to be dropped in, so go ahead and copy that and start cleaning it up. It will take you a minute or two. So I'm going to see if I can go faster than you. I'm not worried so much about the comments being indented, but I am worried about the code being indented because Ruby can be a little picky sometimes. Does it really matter? How do you know it really matters?
If you go work with a bunch of Ruby developers and you don't indent properly, you probably lose your job. That's why it matters.
Or they make you buy lunch or something.
That's the first day. Maybe a couple more. They're very particular about things.
This line here, the one that I'm on right now at the bottom, you want to make sure that's all on the same line. Like that.
So, yeah, I remember this line's a little bit different because I remember there was discussion in other videos about the last line whether we had return false, and return false. Was it 2016 video or something? Or there was a question around that.
And once again, I forgot to hit record, but I'm going into the database right now to manually change the user IDs on a couple of articles so that I can be sure that I can do changes with login, because now the changes that we made to our code are going to require it. So if I look at, let's say, Intro to SQL, that's from user 4. User 4 is the QWER, so I know the password for that, just so I can make sure that I'm logged in correctly when I go to do an edit. In fact, I can do a show here by clicking on the article title. Oh, and all right, we got another problem. All right, let's see if we can figure this one out. It says nil is not an active compatible object. It must be implemented to partial path. ID equals 2. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. Let me do a refresh. And another little concern here is I'm going to actually stop the web server, and you guys can try these techniques yourselves, and then just restart it. That really shouldn't have to be a necessary step, but sometimes I do that because it forces variables to clear from memory.
I wish I would have done that the first time instead of going through the chapter and not getting out of Rails. That's what I did the entire chapter in like one sitting in 6 hours. I did it on Saturday. And then at the end of the day, I closed out, and a week later I opened it up. I should have been doing exiting out of Rails -S, or Control-C, probably every couple pages or so.
Yeah, it does solve stuff.
If I had to do it over again, that's the way I would do it. Otherwise, you're going to get your error at the end like me, and everything is, who knows.
So when you have something to work in, just zip the code and back it up.
I mean,
All right. So we're doing a server restart, if you guys are wondering, but we are having a discussion about it in class. And the reason I'm doing that is I wasn't able to get the article to load, and I'm hoping it loads up now, but so we still have this problem now. So we created a new problem. Yay! And I think it's because of the changes I made here. All right. So if I look at the browser URL, it says articles 2. Is that correct? Article 2, Intro to SQL. I put in the user ID of 4. So it should attribute to my QWER account. Should, right? I did hit the right changes. All right. Now I'm wondering, these two are blank. Maybe let's try the other article. Let's bring that up in the browser, see if that reacts differently. And if we get the same error here, then we have the same issue here. So this one is now not rendering the article at all. All right. Should I switch the article's user IDs back to what they were? Still have the same error?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're telling me if I switch mine, I'll have the same error?
Pretty sure.
Okay. All right, let's figure out the next problem here then. So this is in the show HTML ERB for articles. Let's see if we have that one even open. It's instant. I mean, it's not doing anything fancy here at all. And this is the part that's concerning me right here. See this parameters request? Article ID 9. But that is correct. Okay. Let's see if we can figure out how to fix this. What did we do that made this break? What changes did we make? So I'm checking this particular file to see if there's an issue there, but we made that same type of change.
In the comments too.
So my procedure right now is to check the changes that we most recently made. Users controller was another one that we changed. And I'm looking for spelling mistakes and things of that nature. Now, one thing I can do to troubleshoot it, I'm going to put a comment mark in front of this little snippet of code and save it. I'm not going to restart the web server, although I'm going to tell you I am tempted. Let's see if we can just get this to load up.
What are these hashes? SHA-1?
Yes. Okay. That wasn't the fix, obviously, right? So I can switch that one back. We did add that line here, so let's do this one as a save. Let's see if we can just trigger it right from here. Seems to be the same issue, although I'm not entirely trusting it. So I'm going to refresh. And you know what? I think I am going to restart the web server. Certainly not going to hurt anything. In a real world situation, the web server is really something that you really shouldn't have to restart unless you're doing something to the web server itself. The application really should sit separate. The only reason that we're doing it is because I'm afraid that we get like variables that get stuck in memory, or if we have some other issues. And it also helps, you know, in some cases to rule out certain types of problems. Okay. Nil is not an active model compatible object that must implement to partial path. So it really, it's not able to render the article all of a sudden. So it has to be one of the changes that we just made. So let's just backtrack a little bit and review the changes that we just made.
I think I ran into that problem, and I did something to fix it. I don't know. Something was deprecated, so I had to add a line, or you probably, I don't know, you might not even have that issue.
It's possible. All right, so this is where we started making changes. Now, one thing that, I always find curious between the different versions of these files. So the application controller, which is this one, we do have this line that is different, right? And this I didn't generate. This was automatically generated. So my feeling on those is you leave it alone. That's a general rule of thumb. Would it maybe work if I got rid of the exception portion? Might. Worth a try is the way I look at it. Cue the Jeopardy music. Yeah, I could do it again. I mean, it is being kind of.
No, I just wanted to make sure you.
Oh, it did it. Okay. And you can see here, if it's going to fail, you're going to see it over here too. No is not an active model compatible. It must relate to a partial path. And it seems to read down to line 4, but it's not instantiating the article now. That's pretty perplexing. And clearly the fix that we just tried isn't the fix either. So that should be put back and saved. But then I'm going to go back to the rest of this file. And this is something we pasted in, right? So I'm just very carefully looking at all the actual code. Here's the authenticate method. Either you're logged in or access is denied. Current user is a. I love this method, is a. And I don't see that any of this stuff should be an issue. So this one looks okay to me too. Let's move on to the next one. And this one we already played with, right? The articles controller. I'm kind of looking to you guys for acknowledgement on that. All right, and we did. Well, okay. So this is something that we commented out. So made a change. I'm going to test it again. So it could be that one of the other fixes that I tried was predicated on this one. Yes, and I see the clock. I know that once again Christian's probably eager to get in here. I'm actually just doing a refresh. That didn't work. Can we bring up the actual blog itself? Okay. Alright. So now we're having a much more simplistic problem that I can't figure out. Alright, folks, we are getting to the point here. Aha. You know what I'm going to do? You know what my aha is about? Am I logged in? That shouldn't spit that back unless I was logged in. What's the shortcut for logging in? That's good. Maybe. If this works, it'd be even better, but I'm predicting it's going to fail. Okay. All right, so now I got to work on this problem. Guess what, folks? Class is done, unfortunately. I wish the chapter was done, but it's not the case. Stay tuned for changes.